Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday of Faith in Our Hometown. We're always thrilled when you give up a little bit of your Sunday morning to join us to talk about things that matter to us as people of faith in the greater Joplin area. So welcome this morning. We're going to be talking this morning about something that was a problem that a lot of people didn't even know we had. But a lot of the people in the know figured out that we had a bit of a problem, and that was, how do we take care of some of those folks who really don't still need to be in the hospital, but yet don't quite have a place to go or people to care for them at home, and how do we do some of those kinds of things? So we're going to talk a little bit about respite care and how one of our social organizations here in the community that has a great history of helping out, Gardent, has kind of invented a solution with the help of a lot of other people. And so we're going to be back to talk about a little bit of respite care and how this is going to be a new benefit for our community and the members of our community. So we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and we're going to be right back. Stay with us.
I've had mammograms on the bus probably 12 to 15 times. It has been a lifesaver for me.
The quality of the reading is exactly the same. I will go back home tonight, download these images into the same computer system that the other images that they've been taking at the clinic today, and they'll all be read.
The earlier the better. Don't wait, don't put it off. Get started and do it every year.
Well, again, thanks for being with us this morning. My guest this morning is a familiar face to many of you. Certainly one of my co-workers in this vineyard that we call Southern Missouri here. And it's James Whitford, who's the Executive Director of Gardent. So James, welcome back.
Hey, thanks to be here.
And so tell us a little bit about this respite care program. I think it's phenomenal because we've been talking about the need for something like this for so long, and you figured out a way to get it done. So congratulations and kudos to you and everybody over there at Gardent.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's been a vision for a while. So just the heart of our mission has been to care for people, and we've just recognized that there's a need for folks that are in the hospital and they're needing to be discharged from the hospital, but they don't have anywhere to go, and so
no place to go, nobody to care for them.
Right. So we had a space. In fact, it was our old Worth shop space, that place where people would take time to earn things that they need, and God blessed us with another place to have that Worth shop, and so we had this room, and just about 1,000 square feet, and we were able to renovate it really due to Mercy's Volunteer Auxiliary and a contribution from them to renovate that space.
Wonderful.
Which is, yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people in that auxiliary. I get to have Christmas lunch and a few things with them, and visit with them a couple times a year. And I just think that, again, there's so much good being done, when people find out about it and then suddenly realize that there's a need, and all of a sudden, usually you can find somebody somewhere who will reach in and try to, that's one of the things I love about our area, is that when a need gets known, people will step in and say, well, can we help with this, or how do we do this? Well,
and I mean, I haven't met all of the auxiliary, but certainly the ones that I've met have huge hearts and are very excited. They're just as excited about this new aspect of our ministry as we are.
Well, I'm glad you had this space. See, so often when people get discharged, I'll just give you a perfect example. We had a man in our area, I'll just call him Bill, okay?
Sure.
And he got burned one Sunday and didn't want to go to the hospital and something else. We finally insisted he came in for coffee and donuts that morning. We were looking at him going, but Bill, you need to be in the hospital. You need to be talking. No, I don't want any doctors. I don't want any of this. Don't want any of that. Well, finally, we just said, well, you really think you need to go? And finally, somebody agreed to drive him there. So he went, and then he didn't stay. And then later he had to go back because he was too badly burned. Mm-hmm. And so they finally got him into the hospital and got him into Springfield. And we finally got him cared for, and helped take care of his burns. But then a week or so later, it was like, okay, how do we help get him out of there and do something else? And there was no place for him to go. The only place he had was the little trailer where he was living. And that was where the burn took place. So, I mean, it was all burned and a mess, and we're trying to clean it up and all that stuff. And something like this would have been so much more beneficial for him, because it would have been clean. It would have had people to help him. Oh, yeah. And he just didn't want to trust anybody else. But a situation like this, he probably would have, because it was a church.
Yeah, and I don't know about him, but people who are in that situation often, who are not discharged into a place that's safe, where they can get the rest that they need and the respite or the recovery that they need, end up back in the hospital again. And so that's one of the neat things about a respite unit. And there are missions around the nation that are partnering with hospitals in this regard. So it's been done before, but it's exciting to be here in Joplin and partnering with our hospital system to be able to help people, and again to reduce readmission back into the hospital by 50%. So it's really going to reduce that quite a bit, and it cuts down ER visits by about 64%, just by having a respite unit in your community. So it's an exciking
it's a win
ministry
for everybody. The people aren't spending resources that don't need to be spent. People can get care at a level that they're still going to get what they need, but it doesn't have to be the emergency room. How do we help people to do that?
Well, and that's just a big problem right now. People, don't know where to go or what to do with their next step, and we're just providing another option there that's going to be less expensive, but still with a lot of compassion and a lot of care for the individual. So. Yeah.
And I think it's great that we can figure out ways to do that in partnerships, strategic partnerships to do that. So I'm glad you got connected with the Mercy Auxiliary. They were able to help do this to some degree, so that help you do it, so that you can afford to open the space. Because again, it's great when somebody's got the space and can figure out, okay, we've got the need, can we fix, connect those things together.
So as people come into the respite now, we finished at a concrete ramp, so a wheelchair could come in. We've got 6 rooms, each with their own curtains and hospital beds, and each one is done up where it's just a nice resting area. And then we have a little communal area where folks can sit and talk and just be out of the mix of some of the other things that are going on at the mission. And it has its own shower and bathroom facility. So really nice little spot that's been renovated there.
Yeah, so you can handle up to 6 people at a time.
For right now. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. If the demand is really high, then we'll be looking at some other options to expand that space. But right now we've got 6 beds that we can offer.
Well, in this regard, it's again one of those things, if we can get the community educated about that, and again, our community does seem to care. When they know that there's a need, they'll try to step forward in so many ways and try to meet it. And so there's the challenge, but I'm just glad that we kind of broke through that wall of, what are we going to do about this, to, hey, we got a space. Hey, we've got some resources. Let's bring all that together and start taking care of our neighbors a little bit better. Which is wonderful.
It really is a win-win. It's something that when social workers are on the scramble trying to figure out where they're going to send somebody, and they know that their time in this hospital bed is up, but they don't want to discharge them to the streets. Because when you do that, they end up right back in the hospital again. What are you going to do? But then again, it offers us an opportunity to minister the gospel of Christ to people, and to love them right where they are, and to care for them in a time where they're more vulnerable even than they typically would be as a homeless individual. There's already vulnerability in the mix, but to be coming out of the hospital needing recovery and being homeless, you're certainly vulnerable. So it is a win-win.
Yeah, so this isn't for people who've got insurance and can afford step-down units and those kinds of things. We're not talking about this service for them, because their insurance and things, for the most part, will take care of some of that. But these are people without any other resources.
Right, yeah, that's exactly right. We're talking about folks who have nowhere to go, or maybe it is that trailer with no electricity and no water. I mean, something that's unlivable, and so we want to have that space just for those folks.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, that was, whenever I start thinking about, I wish this had been around, 6 months ago, that would have been one of those moments. Oh, by the way, just for anybody, this that wants to know whatever happened to Bill, we got him back, things were going good and everything was fine. And then probably a few months ago, we hadn't seen him for a few days, so one of his friends went by to check on him, and they found him, and he passed away. So that's okay. I think it was just his time, I'm going to tell you a little story about him. I think it's kind of fun. He wanted a St. Dismas medal. And Dismas, because he said, Dismas, and I never asked the details of why he won it, but Dismas was the repentant thief, the one that hung on Jesus' the repentant thief that you read about in the scriptures that hung on Jesus' side and said, we haven't done anything wrong, but we've done some things wrong, but he hasn't. So, and Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
Right.
So, I mean, this whole story goes, and Jesus says, this day you'll be with me in paradise.
Yes.
Well, this particular man wanted a St. Dismas medal, and so we got him a St. Dismas medal. As a matter of fact, we got 2 or 3 because he was in the habit of losing them. But we got a few, and we were able to make sure that he could, keep good touch and feel in contact with his buddy Dismas, from the other side, which we thought was pretty good. So he always had one in his court, doing that. And I'm sure that St. Dismas was probably there at the gates to meet him, and welcome him in. But that was, that was just his particular story. And again, you've worked with enough people from the streets and, and the neighborhoods to know that there's a million of them out there.
Well, yeah, and all the stories are different. And what's interesting is over the years, you've learned that stories can go in one direction or they can go in another. And even with this man that I think of that you're talking about, I wonder if he had been into a facility like a respite unit rather than going back into his rundown conditions. Could that ministry, have changed direction or something in his life that would have been for his better in the long run? And so that's what we love to do is can we change the story, the trajectory, right, for the better? Right. That's what we love to do.
Yep. And God knows there were enough people that were trying, but sometimes people are so stubborn.
Isn't that true?
But he didn't want to. He did trust the church, but he didn't trust a lot of other agencies or things like that. He was just one of those folks that was just a little suspicious of government and all those things. And you and I will share that feeling too. That sometimes there are things that churches can do better than the government.
Yes.
And, God
quite a few things, I think, Father Jay.
I'm being kind, but I think that that could have made a difference in his life, especially in that window where he needed the help. That window, especially where he needed the assistance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we have, I was thinking of a lady. I don't know if we've got time to tell
we got a couple minutes before the break. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, just thinking about, how did the respite care idea come about? And, we'd been, certainly people who are coming out of the hospital, if we've got a bed in our shelter, right, we'll try to get them into a bed.
Sure.
But to have this designated spot's a different thing. And I remember one evening I met a lady, and she was sitting on the curb outside on the mission steps, and she said, "Can I? Is there going to be a bed tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, I can check." And I looked, and I said, "It doesn't look like there are going to be any open beds in our women's unit." And I remember she kind of pulled her shirt down. She had a cardiac pacemaker scar. She had just gotten out of the hospital from having a cardiac pacemaker put in. She's like, "I don't know what I'm going to do." And to watch her walk away. I remember watching her walk away and just thinking, goodness, we've got to do something more than what we're doing. And so thankful for our community, like you say, who's so generous in so many ways, and for God to provide the resource to be able to, just make a space for people just like this lady who didn't have anywhere else to go that night. So
yeah, it's so interesting because I think that sometimes people think that Jesus gave us a magic wand when we started doing this, that we could somehow just wave it and make it all better. And you know as well as I do that it's usually not ever the case.
It doesn't feel like that.
Yeah. So at any rate, my guest this morning, James Whitford from Water Gardens. We're talking a little bit about the opening up of the respite care unit that they just did. So we're going to be right back after a quick break. Don't go away, and we'll be back when you get finished with the break.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Well, again, thanks for staying with us again. James Whitford, Water Gardens, my guest today. James has been on several times on the program, and I really just have to say I love the community spirit when it comes to trying to approach these things. I think many years ago when I first came, sometimes I felt like we were all duplicating services and we were all stepping all over each other trying to do the same things in some ways. And I just think we've gotten so much better in the last 14 years about learning how to support each other in taking care of the different needs, you know, and I love that because, you know, if somebody comes in, you know, needing a little bit of medical care, you know, I can send them to a community clinic, you know, knowing that they'll fit in that, what community clinic does. Now, you know, again, our hospitals and the social workers at both of our hospitals and all of our places are going to say, oh, hey, wait a minute, we do have a place here who does respite care. If we've got somebody who doesn't have a place to be or anybody to be with, we've now got a space to be able to do that. And I love the fact that, you know, that we can network well enough to know those things are going on and try to meet those needs in the greater community.
It does seem like there's good collaboration and the ability to find what's that empty space where there's a need that's not being met, and who's the best to step into that. And so certainly that's kind of how our Washington Family Hope Center came about, right? Just knowing there was a need for a place where moms and kids who are experiencing homelessness can get a fresh start and be safe, and seeing that there was a gap in our community and meeting that particular need. And when we thought, well, we know how to shelter. We've been doing that for quite a while, so maybe we should step up and try to fill that gap. And
I think that was the last time you were on the show, frankly, was when you had the big opening for the Washington Center.
Well, I think it might have been our Forge. Maybe it was our True Charity Summit that we did.
Well,
we
the True Charity Summit, that's probably true. But before that, it was the Washington.
Well, our Washington Family Hope Center project is
how long has it been open now?
Well, it's renovated. It's not open, so it's fully renovated. We're furnishing it right now, Father Jay. It'll be open probably latter April. So we're looking about April 30th. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You know, we should probably have you back on to tout that. But talk a little bit more about it, because I love I love the concept.
It's so beautiful. I mean, you walk into the Washington Education. It was the Washington Elementary School building, right? So it's an old building, but they're on East 2nd Street. But when you walked into it, I mean, it was a shambles. And now you walk into it, it's just beautiful.
You're like, wow.
It's been totally transformed. You'll walk into the large dining area that now has a commercial kitchen on one end of it, and then there's this large pad that's been set out for an indoor playground. So we'll have one of those indoor, kind of a 2-story playground for kids that'll be inside, and it's got a nursery and a child care center, 6 family rooms for moms with kids, and we'll have a learning center, a classroom that will be designated for, so it's just fantastic. We're very excited about that.
That's another thing I love about Joplin is that we don't just like tear everything down.
Right.
You know? Of course, now we lost a lot of buildings, in the tornado.
Well, we didn't do that.
We didn't do that one, but I love the fact that we repurpose so many things. Being downtown, being where St. Peter's and everything, we did the same thing. It's just like, when we, figured out where to put the other school, it's like, well, can we take this building and redo it, and again, that's where our middle school came from. So I think we're really good in the community about trying to make sure that we recycle and reuse our buildings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is wonderful.
Well, in this particular building, my wife went to elementary school as well. So, gosh, I'm glad it's still there.
Hey, yeah. My grade school got torn down to straighten out Highway 70 in St. Louis. That was kind of a bad deal. So I kind of still miss it. Yeah. Whenever I make the curve and it's not as sharp as it used to be on Highway 70, I'm kind of like, okay, I guess it's safer. So I guess we're good. Right. But it is. I love that recycling and repurposing of things. And so again, I know we talked about it at one point in time. Maybe it was after you guys started the project and were raising funds for it. I think it was when you were doing fundraising for it.
Oh yeah, I think we have. Yeah, I think we have. We're very close now. So
hey, that's great.
Very close to
that's great. I just in my
doors.
head I already had it open and figured out it was going on.
We're going through all the security things now with where we're going to have mag-lock doors and intercom systems and motion sense and cameras, all that stuff. So we're really big on making sure that a facility is safe like that. So that's kind of what we're working through right now.
And those safety needs have to be considered, especially with some of the folks that you'll have in there, because some of them will have been leaving situations that were not healthy.
Yeah, it's potentially. Dangerous. That's exactly right.
That's good.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like I say, I know with, for example, our Life House in Springfield. Okay. Again, it's kind of like, you really have to be buzzed in order to get in there, because you just can't. Nobody can just walk up and do it, and you just think. Now they've not really had any trouble, so I don't think you're probably going to have much trouble around there either, but you can't afford not to take the precaution, especially with people, who are leaving situations that were not healthy.
Well, yeah, right. And I mean, it'll be a variety of situations. Again, for us, it's going to be a mom with children who are finding themselves with nowhere to go that's safe. And we want to be able to take them in really at any time and at least get started from there. Some of those families will probably just need a short amount of stay until maybe they reconnect with some family. Could be a week or two, but there'll be others that will go through, I'm sure, work readiness and training and things, offer childcare while they start getting back in the workforce. And so some of those families, I'm sure, will be there for a longer time.
Sure.
So, yeah.
You should be able to do that. It's interesting, James. I just thought about this. Most of the time we're here talking about the programs and the things that you're putting in place. This is one of our big seasons during Lent. We don't really often quite talk about the faith and the preaching and the ministry side. Oh, it's all ministry,
sure,
but
yeah.
I'm just saying, but we never really get a chance to talk about about that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. We always talk about program
Yeah.
stuff, don't we? Mm-hmm.
It's all for people, but still,
Right.
they're important. What I mean, I don't know that we've ever talked about, the kind of the makeup of what rescue mission, gospel
Sure.
mission is.
Yeah.
So where'd that come about, and how'd you guys? What's your big history, your big back history?
Well, first of all, we weren't called Watered Gardens Gospel Rescue
Right.
Mission in the
Right.
beginning. It was just Watered Gardens, and it came out of the Bible. It's Isaiah chapter 58. God is speaking to his people through his prophet Isaiah, basically telling them, you've got to do more than just sit on the pews. There's more that I've called you to. He says, is this not the fast that I've chosen for you to divide your bread with the hungry, to clothe the naked, to bring the homeless poor into your house? And then you will be like a watered garden and like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Beautiful passage.
Sure.
And so
I
our
love
heart,
Isaiah.
so
I just
the
saw
heart,
that.
oh yeah,
The vision.
oh yeah.
The vision. I just, I'm hoping to get a few more glimpses of it before I get to leave this place. But
Yeah, beautiful passage. And just so the heart of my wife and I when we started the ministry was always for the church and the church's involvement as much as it was to help people who were struggling in need. And so from the very beginning, there's been it's been very gospel centric, right? We know that, and in fact research proves it, it's faith that is really making the difference in people's lives. We can throw a lot of programs and a lot of things at folks, but if we're not coupling that with the good news that sins can be wiped away, that there's old can be wiped away, behold, all things are new, right? That's a beautiful promise, and so it gives hope to people. And too many people these days, Father Jay, are just without hope. We see it every day. And so that gospel aspect of when we're doing our preaching on Friday nights or Wednesday nights or Sunday early mornings, and the Bible studies and stuff that we do on Wednesday mornings. It's throughout the week.
Right.
We're even doing devotion times every morning. It's all about how do we inspire people to consider that there's a God who created them, there's a God who loves them just the way that they are, and there's a new hope that you can get a hold of for your future.
Well, I just realized, just as we were sitting here talking, that's the reason why I asked the question, because I knew if I just scratched the surface a little bit, you'd do exactly what you just did, which is wonderful, because, sometimes I think sometimes sometimes a lot of people think about our churches just as social service organizations.
Right.
And they're a lot more than that. They come from a faith stance from where we are as people of faith. That's why we step forward and do some of the social servicey things that we do, is because our faith compels us to, when we see what God wants us to do. And God kind of taps us on the shoulder and says, hey, I got a new plan for you. I got a new job.
Right.
And and while you were in that Isaiah thing, I'm just going to say this. A lot of Isaiah, especially the early part, it also talks about the fact that there's going to be a cost or a sacrifice. There's going to be a little suffering that has to be done by the faithful people, so that the rest of it can blossom and the rest of it can live. And so I'm thinking about those sections of the suffering servant Psalms in Isaiah, where basically everybody's been told, again, and for us, as Christians, Jesus becomes the penultimate suffering servant. But the rest of us have to remember that it's going to be a little bit of a sacrifice. It's going to be a little tough, and we're going to have to, hurt a little bit if we're going to help those other people and bring about God's new thing.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we forget about that. We just think it should all be easy.
Yeah.
That's my big temptation. My big temptation in life is to think that it should be easy.
Yeah. Well, you said it
or
earlier.
Easier.
It's not a magic wand.
Nope.
And so, that's important, right? So our faith drives us to do something, and it often is sacrificial. Yeah. But this is what Jesus said, right? If we want to follow him, we'll have to deny ourselves, take up our cross
Follow in his
and
footsteps.
follow him, right?
Yeah.
So so it's not going to be an easy thing,
No.
but oh so rewarding. And see,
Oh, yeah.
that's what people forget. It's on the other side of the cross or death that we find resurrection life, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, back to Isaiah 58, this was God's promise. It's when you're giving sacrificially that you find there's real life, a flourishing life, and that's just a truth.
Yeah.
It's a truth.
Well, again, kudos to you all for thinking about it when you had that empty space. I love the fact that we got a respite care place now here in town where if somebody's in need, we're going to be able to offer them a bed for a little while to get them better. So that when they do finally step out back into, their quote normal life,
right,
they've got a chance of doing it with a little bit more health and a little bit more stability, and that's a phenomenal thing.
It's such a needed spot in our community, discharging from a hospital, having a place to go, finish your recovery, and then move on from there. So glad to be filling that.
Again, James Whitford, my guest this morning. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute for our wrap-up, okay?
The dreaded tagged photo. I married the love of my life in October, and when I got home that night, I saw this. Frankly, this is every obese person's worst nightmare. You have no control, none, over what other people post. And up until that day, I'd been very careful about how I presented myself on social media. In fact, I generally only posted photos like this. What's sad is that I haven't always been like this. Confession, I've been a yo-yo dieter for roughly 10 years. When I met this amazing guy 3 years ago, he didn't care how much I weighed, but he did care about my health. A month after our wedding, I talked to my doctor and my journey began. Here's an honest and usually pretty entertaining look at how I got to bariatric surgery and beyond. Buckle up, check out my blog, Confessions of a Yo-Yo Dieter.
Again, we're so grateful you joined us for another Sunday morning at Faith in our hometown. I teasingly say to some of you when they say, we watch you every Sunday morning, and I'm just like, you need a life on Sunday morning. But we're glad that you're with us. One of the best things about this job in terms of talking with other people from around the community is some of the things that just kind of boil up, from underneath. There was a need, it was seen, a group got together and started to talk about, well, we've got a space, and some other folks said, well, we can help bankroll you a little bit. Let's do this together and make a difference in our community. It's one of the reasons why I love this community, because so many things happen because people care. And now that we have a respite care center operated by Gardent on behalf of all the rest of us here in our area, anybody of goodwill, it's a blessing indeed. So we thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you have a great Sunday. Come back and join us again next week for Faith in our hometown. God bless.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.